Welcome everyone to this webinar on data-driven entrepreneurship. My name's Craig Paterson. I work as an associate at the Data Lab. I'm also a consultant and a coach. I also work at Strathclyde University as a global practitioner, so helping around digital and data transformation. So that's me. I'm not going to do an introduction to the Data Lab, because you've all signed up through the interface anyway. But I am going to plug the Data Lab community because I think it's an awesome place for connecting to like-minded people, connecting with people a little bit further on their journey than you, and helping people that need a bit of your help. So that's a big plug for the community. So I'd recommend you dive in. So in terms of today, we're going to cover, I think the subtext of this was a whirlwind tour of the concepts and ideas in the course that we've got around data-driven entrepreneurship, which we'll most definitely cover. I have an agenda that I'll show you. I'll pace through that. One of the things that I would like to do is get you to participate and use Mentimeter as a way to do that. So when the time comes, if you go to menti.com, you'll be able to see what we're doing and you'll be able to vote in the questions. So no pressure. It's nice to get some interaction. That would be awesome because then that helps me guide it and make sure you get some value out of this. But if you want to just sit back with your lunchtime popcorn and listen, that is equally fine. But again, the more participation we get, the more hopefully value you'll get from it. So in terms of questions, I'll keep some time left at the end for general questions, but please ask as you go. So please, I'll be monitoring the chat function. So please ask in the chat function if you've got questions. I would request you keep them short and snappy, not essays, because I'll be trying to put it and read at the same time. So I'm not very good at multitasking. So keep it short and snappy, and hopefully we'll have a good conversation. So hopefully you're on the right place. I can't see any of you, so hopefully some people are there. I know Paul's there because he's already chatted posted in the chat function. But let's get started and have a little chat about data-driven entrepreneurs and what it means to be a data-driven entrepreneur. So I guess this is a way of finding out if there's anybody out there, also for a simple way of us using Menti. So I will put the direct link into here we go. Oops. So if you can jump on Mentimeter, that would be awesome. What I'd like to find out is a little bit of who's turned up for this event. So are you an entrepreneur? Are you a wannabe entrepreneur? Or are you someone who's just interested in the topic? So it'd be great to see who we've got on the call. So it's nice to see some results coming in. Always a massive relief that you're not just chatting to yourself. Fantastic. So good, good to see people are coming in. That's good. So an interest in the topic, which is good. I think hopefully you'll get some value from this, because one of the things I find about data and most digital transformation, but data specifically, it's not industry specific. Also, although this is about entrepreneurship, there's at least two people that we'll mention as I go through today that are, I don't really like the term entrepreneur, but basically they're entrepreneurs within their own big organization. So hopefully even those of you that are in big organizations, can get some value, and those that aspire to be entrepreneurs. Hopefully what you'll get through today is an introduction of some of the characters that you can engage with through the course that will inspire you to do great things. So thank you for doing that. Also gives a little chance to test out Mentimeter. So awesome, let's go. Oops. So in terms of what I'm going to cover today, we call it this whirlwind tour. So I'll give you the purpose of the course. What's the point of it? Why is it in existence? What would you get out of it if you came on it? And then we'll dive into what we mean by a data-driven entrepreneur. In this space that we're in, data, digital transformation, we tend to use lots of words, assuming that everyone else knows what they mean, which is not always the case. So we'll define these terms up front. I'm going to ask you for your views in there, so be ready with your fingers on the trigger. And then we'll really focus on the fact that this is practitioner-led. Okay, so this is about hearing from people who have done what we're talking about. So this isn't theory. There's some theory and structure around about it so that it's a coherent narrative, but this is very much practitioner-led. And that's where we'll talk about this idea of adaptive intelligence. So I'm not going to get that too much. And then I'll give you a sneak peek. I'm going to pick one of the sections of the course, give you some of the highlights in it, ask you a few sort of questions, and hopefully that will be of value. When I say asking questions, I tend not to ask questions that you can get wrong, right? I'll ask you your opinion on things. So please don't be shy in sharing your opinion. That would be awesome. So here we go. So in terms of the course, right? So as I say, we wanted this to be practitioner led. There's lots of courses out there. There are different ways of running courses, but what we wanted to make this was very centered on the entrepreneur. So what does it mean to be an entrepreneur, and how does data and AI help with your journey towards success? And the keywords that I've highlighted there are insights. So the insights are from practitioners, and the focus is on that entrepreneurial spirit. So one of the things I'm going to get you to do now is like, what are we talking about? Okay, so again, if you could jump back onto Mentimeter, so either follow the link in the chat or just go straight to menti.com on your laptop or mobile device, put in that code. We're going to treat as a bit of a word cloud. So I was just going to ask you for what are some of the words that spring to mind when you think of an entrepreneur? So what are some of the characteristics? So maybe just type in, like, so I think it's up to 3, but you can put as many in as you want. So what do you think are words that highlight? Yes, I will share the link again. That is great. So here we go. There's a link through. So what are some of the words that spring to mind when you think of an entrepreneur? So let's see what's coming through. Oh, nice. You know, passionate, ambitious, bold, creative, hardworking, business case. Yeah, very driven, fantastic. Oh, it's such a relief when the words that you're hoping for start to come up, which is good. As I say, all of this is anonymous, so we can't see who said what. Joanna, I will send you the link directly if that hasn't come through. If you can't see the link, as it says at the top, just go to a device and go to menti.com, www.menti.com, and put in the code 38991534. Oh, so it's good to see some answers coming in here. The boss, I like that one. Risk taker, yeah, risk is definitely something that's coming through. Vision, fearless, like it. This is great. Gap in the market, someone to try new things. It's very good. Very good. So all of these things are good hooks for it. So we'll be talking in the course in itself. There'll be a big talk about ambition. There's a big section around ethics, which highlights on risk and what it means. There's a couple of sections about the business value of data and how that can help you justify your proposition, how you would talk to investors about your proposition, and this the kind of bravery to do something, to find that gap in the market, that spot in the market where there's something different, to do some innovation. So these are all themes that will come through as we go through. So that's awesome. So I'm just going to keep on going in the interest of time. It's amazing how quickly the time goes. So one of the things, I'll show you later on the people that are involved in the course, but in terms of the interviews, one of the things we asked them was, what is an entrepreneur in your definition, and what is a data-driven entrepreneur? So you'll see that emerging through the course. And we'll pull together in the course, like our definition, but what's really interesting is getting the nuance or the different perspectives that people have. So hopefully if you do the course, you'll find someone you relate to, and their definition will be of most interest to you. But one of the things that comes through a lot is this drive, this drive to have the confidence to bring, as we say here, a world-changing solution to life. So again, thinking back at some of the words that we talked about in the word cloud there, you're starting to see it's about drive, it's about passion, it's about change, it's having the confidence to lead. Someone said the boss, right? So you get different types of bosses, but we won't go into that. But yeah, the person who's going to drive it forward. So we've got this base foundation of an entrepreneur, which is this desire to do something different. So the gap in the market, so change the world, hopefully change the world for the better, it would be the goal there. And one of the things we wanted to do was to expand that out, to start to think about what it means to be data driven. So in terms of data driven, we broke it into 2 lenses. So first of all, being data driven, and if I am that entrepreneur, how can I use data to help me validate the opportunity, to find the gap in the market, and to use that as part of my narrative, how I justify to people that this is a good idea, and more importantly, that it's worth putting their money into. So one of the things that came through from our entrepreneurs was the power of data and storytelling and visualization as a way, as an entrepreneur, no matter what you're doing, as a way of connecting with people, connecting with investors, connecting with potential customers, and connecting with employees and people that you want to bring together. So using that data to define, sharpen, focus in the proposition, and ultimately get people to invest in it, be it invest as customers, invest as employees, or invest as like shareholders. The other thing is the delivery aspect of it, which is probably the more obvious one, which is, as an entrepreneur, my solution is built on data or is built on AI. So data and AI are a fundamental part of it. But we thought these are two different lenses to bear in mind. But as we go through the course, that is right at the beginning, our anchor definition of what we mean by data-driven entrepreneur. As we go through the course, we build up what we see as the characteristics of a data-driven entrepreneur. And there's a wee kind of sneak peek of some of that towards the end of today. So hopefully we're starting to get on the same page. So I've talked about this being like practitioner-led. One of the things we wanted to do in this first version of the course, so we wanted to get to market as quick as possible, so hopefully people can get some value from it. We've done a couple of pilot runs and prototype runs and fine-tuned it based on that. But it is very much practitioner-led. It's very much in the spirit of, if you could have a fireside chat with someone who's been there before, what would they tell you? So we've structured it around that. So we've pulled together some interesting people here. So, and in the space that these people are in, so you've got people like Stephen Drost at the top right, who's talking about the value of data for entrepreneurs, or Sandy Enoch down the bottom towards the right. Sorry, Stephen's at the left. Entrepreneurial startup leadership skills. So these are two people who have been entrepreneurs themselves, have launched their own businesses, and how they go forward. You've also got people that would be, I guess, entrepreneurs is probably the term that people use. So you've got Tracy from NHS, and you've got Rami from Chaz, who inside larger organizations have used data as a way to change the way that they do things. So Tracy's got a great story about using data to help with the triage of patients. And Rami has a really powerful story because it's such an emotional space that he's in. A really powerful story of how he used data to focus his money and his attention into the areas to have the biggest difference. So across there, we've got these practitioners who have been like entrepreneurs in the typical startup way, and people that have done it within bigger organizations. And scattered across there, we've got some thought leaders as well. So we've got Chris talking about the power of design thinking, which is keeping the customer at the center of what you do. You've got Shannon talking about ethics. I mean, you cannot engage into the space of data and AI without touching on ethics. And she has an eloquent way of explaining some of the concepts, and it's her section that we'll do the sneak peek of later on. You've got Vicky talking about visualization, the power of storytelling, and that human connection you can make. And then we've got Michael from the university talking about how you pull that all together into a bigger picture, a story, and the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem that you can connect into. So hopefully there'll be someone in there going, that's a person's a bit like me, or someone who's been somewhere that I want to be. So we do structure it around that. So there's people in public sector, private sector, third sector, academia, etc. So hopefully no matter where you are, you'll get some sort of connection with the people that we've pulled into this course. I have to say, it's probably one of the most fun things that I have done for the Data Lab, what was interviewing these people and pulling out the key messages. It was absolute joy. So what I'd like to do is get a feel for the people in the room. So what I've talked about, this value of data for entrepreneurs, how can data make a positive difference to your success in that entrepreneur? Or is it data ethics? Why ethics is so important to what you do as you start and as your ongoing proposition? Is it around data for the purpose of visualization or storytelling? So that visualization might be for how you run your business to make sure that your entrepreneurial startup business is going the right direction, or storytelling in terms of how you connect with people. Or is it what Rami's in the space of data for good? So what is your drive? So we talked about world changing ideas. Do you want to change the world for better? Do you want to do data for good? How you might pull that together? Or is it around, this customer-centric design thinking? So as an entrepreneur, how can I use data to help me shape my proposition to meet a market demand, a space in the market, a gap in the market, an opportunity to be there? Is it the responsible design? So again, some great things that come out from Tracy's section around how you get data and humans to work well together in a new space. Or is it leadership skills? So Sandy's story of how he got from next to nothing to a business that's got like a deep penetration in his target market and probably more growth than they can manage in a short amount of time? Or is it this kind of more holistic view and how we connect into the ecosystem? So I see that people have been happily voting. So let's see what sort of answers have come in. That's great to see. So I'm always a positive person, so I'm asking you for the top two. So if something's got a low score, it doesn't mean that it's not interesting, it just means that it's not the one that we're focusing in on. And what I've tried to do is kind of split it out, like in terms of who's a, so it's a couple of unknowns, people that weren't here in time for the first question, but for those that are like want to be entrepreneurs, what is the area that interests them the most? So for those that aspire to be an entrepreneur, like a big interest in design thinking, a big interest in the entrepreneurial startup skills. So design thinking, again, really, as I say, really powerful for putting the human at the center of what you're doing, particularly in a space that can seduce people with what you can do. That's a great thing I can do with data. That's a great thing I can do with AI. Is remembrance of the human very much at the center, and then those entrepreneurial leadership skills. So I think you'll get real value from engaging in Sandy's story and the journey that he's gone on. And that one in particular inspired me because I'd literally been at a conference with my daughter the weekend before, where she got to play with the robot that Sandy creates, and then to actually go and meet Sandy and ask him some questions was fantastic. And for looking at those that are interested in the topic, the big piece seems to be around that visualization and that data for good. So really good to see that in there. So yeah. So that really helps us. So I'm delighted that there's at least a spread across there. But again, it'll help us as we iterate the course and we go forward to see what's most interesting. Other thing, so having experienced courses that I didn't like, one of the things that we've tried to do is to think about all the things that are not so good about courses and get rid of them. So not only is this practitioner-led, is it experience-led, we've tried to get some interaction in there as much as possible. So in the prototype, we've not got many tools, but there's lots of opportunities to talk and discuss. And what I would say is that, consider this as a framework for thinking about the opportunity to be a data-driven entrepreneur, but really grasp in the spirit of the community the way to connect with other people. So if you do the course, there's lots of chats, and I would encourage you to chat, to share your stories, because you'll probably find that there are things that you can help people with and vice versa that people can help you with. So get that conversation going and ultimately build your network out the back of this. Something that was across all these people was the power of a network, and how having people that have their back and understanding the roles that they play and the roles that they don't play and what they rely on people for was like a big key part of their success. So it's unlikely you'll do this journey and go on this journey on your own, but it'll give you a feel for the type of engagement that you want to have with people and the type of teams that you want to have around about it. So thank you for everyone that's kind of voted in there. It gives a feel for what's most important. So big shout outs for the entrepreneurial skills, the data visualization and the design thinking, but they all got a vote, which was the main thing. So excuse me, I always seem to lose my voice when I'm doing these things. So here we go. So can I talk through like some of the topics that we've got? I've talked through some of the practitioners. I've talked through some of the things that we want to do, keep it interactive. As we were going through this, so this was a course that grew organically. So what we didn't want to do was something that was prescriptive and then try and find people that would back up our views. What we tried to do was engage with people and see what story emerged out of this. So just, coincidentally at the time, I was reading this book called Adaptive Intelligence. A fantastic book, highly recommended. You can find it, the links from the pictures from Waterstones, but other bookstores exist. Great book in terms of talking about what is intelligence and how this applies to the 21st century. What I found was that the themes around the need for intelligence showcased by creativity, intelligence showcased by analytical, so data typical, like IQ type intelligence, practical intelligence, experience, and the morals of doing the right things, seemed to be a framework that fit very well with the key messages that were coming out. So this is something that we've used as a way of summarizing the findings, the thoughts, the views that emerged from the different people involved in the course. So it sort of conveniently, so how we picked the first 8 was how like 2 sat within each. So one's practitioner led and one is thought leader led. So we wanted to get that mix of practitioners and thought leaders in there. So if you do the course, you'll see this pattern coming through. And I'm saying if you're not an entrepreneur or if you don't do the course, totally recommend the book or at least reading a review of it, because it's a really nice way of thinking about what success looks like and what the intelligence of a successful business looks like. So let's do a bit of a sneak peek. So I picked Shannon, because it's probably of all of them, it was one of the ones that I got the most out of. And everyone will get different, will get the most out of different areas. But I got the most out of this because at the time I was really interested in ethics, I still am, but really how you apply that into the world of digital transformation. So being able to sit down and ask some questions with Sharon was great. So if you look at the left-hand side of this, where you get the little column, this is a sort of flow that would go through. So again, in the spirit of a fireside conversation, Shannon being a thought leader, asking her for the latest insights around ethics. So where is society's head about this and what we need to do? Why should you bother being ethical? So some definitions of an entrepreneur are all about the money and the success, and it doesn't matter about the wreckage you leave in your wake. But, what is the benefit, particularly given what society expects of us, of being ethical about the way we conduct ourselves? One of the areas that was really significant for me was lessons from the past that show the value of applying ethics and the value of having regulation around the space. So regulation is often quite seen by people as suppressing innovation, suppressing entrepreneurs, but really there was a really powerful conversation about how it can constrain the risks and create a space for people to delight customers and how customers would engage more deeper with that because there's an element of trust. So you can see the sort of questions that are going through there. Towards the end, there were a couple of things that we did with everyone. So, having had a chat, what is their definition of an entrepreneur? So again, something that you can connect with. My favorite question, the time machine question, which is, as long as you don't tell anyone, I actually have a time machine and I can travel back in time. So I took each of these people back in time so that they could give advice to their younger selves. So this was quite powerful in terms of, particularly for the entrepreneurs. So thinking back to Sandy, thinking back to Stephen, etc. Now that they are experienced entrepreneurs, what tips and advice would they have given the younger self? So that builds up into quite a body of knowledge for a lot of the people that identified as being like an aspirational entrepreneur. So it's some great advice from people that have been there before. Reflection is how we pulled it together under those headings of adaptive intelligence. And then what's that definition of a data-led entrepreneur? But really we started to tease out the characteristics of what a data-led entrepreneur would be. So again, I'm keeping one eye on the time as we go through this. I'll just dive in towards the reflection piece in here. So you can look to see that, and this was across all of the interviews at the end, from a creative perspective, what was the key message that came out? From an analytical perspective, what was the key message that came out? From practical experience, what was the key message? And for doing things in the right way. So really, for me, and I'll touch on each of those, is thinking of regulations as a space in which to innovate. So stay within the ethical boundaries, and that will encourage people to trust your new idea. So particularly if it's a breakthrough idea, there's a risk to customers of being the first to go there. If they can feel that there's a comfort of some guidance, some support, some regulation around about it, that someone's got their back if it goes wrong, then they're probably more likely to engage with you. Analytical point that was made, was around learning from the past. So how can we use data and data-led insight to see what happened before and making sure we do the right things based on what happened before and avoid doing the wrong things. So where that's particularly relevant in this ethics space is that we don't magnify bad behavior of the past. We actually fix that and focus on the right things. The practical thing was, losing my voice again, is that, from an ethical point of view, it's easy to say you're ethical. It's less easy to be ethical. It's quite hard to navigate that. So first of all, ethics is subjective. Secondly, who regulates your ethics? What I would say is a trend that I've seen coming up, particularly with digital-led companies or data-led companies, is there are people that will keep an eye on your organization because they want to make sure you do the right thing, and they will call you out if you do the wrong thing. So they talk about ethics washing. So when we say one thing and do another. So you don't want to be that company that's got a great idea that's pushing forward, but all the news stories are about you doing the wrong thing as opposed to what your product or your innovation is. And then the benefit of doing things for the right thing. So how can we align this into creating the right culture and space that the whole organization attracts the best talent, your proposition attracts the most people, and that you do things, again, linked back to that ethical way. So for each of the conversations with the practitioners or thought leaders that we engage with, we managed to pull something out under those headings, and it was quite a natural process. But thinking back to those eight people overall, this is just a sneak peek of some of the things with Sharon. So thinking back, who got your higher votes, this is a sort of feedback and insight that you're going to get. I just wanted to share some of that with you. So again, just to keep this interactive, it would be great to get a view on just where your head's at now. So not having done the course, maybe just having listened to the chat there. When you think of your idea, as an entrepreneur, as a wannabe entrepreneur, an existing entrepreneur, do you think regulation stimulates innovation? Yes, no, not so sure, maybe, depends on the circumstances. I asked this question recently, and it really does. I'm glad I got a no in there, because I would say it does kind of divide people. So some of the nuance that comes out round about this is, when regulation is of merit, when regulation has the most value, from a customer perspective or from an entrepreneur's perspective themselves. Also, like who does the regulation and how credible are those regulators? So it's nice to see those votes coming in. And we're going to share the slides with the session. I'm sure we can. Yeah. So I'll double check, but yes, I think we'll be able to do that. Just taking a note. So don't forget. And this stimulates some deep debate. So again, bringing it back to you as the concept of an entrepreneur is, I would make sure that you have your position on this, that you understand how to articulate your position and defend your position, and what that might mean to the conversations you have with potential investors, potential customers, or potential employees in there. So we're starting to see, so 5 for yes, 3 for no, a few maybes. So again, if we were doing this as an online course, we could explore this in a bit further, but just in terms of the spirit of a webinar, it gives a bit of a feel for where we are. One of the things that's quite interesting is to ask yourself, like, before and after you've been through the course, and before and after you've delivered something. Pain points tend to be fruitful grounds for innovation. Absolutely. It depends on the personal traits, culture, the growth mindset. Start thinking outside the box. Yeah, I mean, so again, some of the times that we've done this as a more nuanced debate is you get a lot of passion from people going, I've got this great idea. I really want to explore it. I really want to push the boundaries. Who's this that's pulling me back? So again, at that idea stage, it's maybe good to do that free thinking, that open thinking. But as you get closer to the launch stage, it's going, okay, now I've thought about my idea. I'm going to disrupt the market. I'm going to make a big difference. But are people ready to adopt this idea? So you don't want to be one of these companies that have an awesome idea, but no one adopts it because of the risk associated. So again, part of the nuanced conversation is where regulation kicks in. And I think overall, sitting across all of this is your trust in the regulators. Hoping the regulators don't try to challenge your idea. That's a good one. I mean, I had a conversation recently within financial services where we had regulators in the room and organizations in the room. And it's amazing how they view each other, and there's a difference between a bad regulator and a good regulator, in terms of, what is the spirit of the regulator? Is it to encourage innovation and support organizations, or is it to stop innovation? So again, most of these things come down to people, but great to have at least have a think about some of these topics. So I'm going to crack on. So in terms of the sneak peek, so as we ended each of the interviews and pulling out some of the key messages, what we focused on was what are these characteristics that are starting to emerge of what a data-driven entrepreneur is. So in terms of the conversation with Shannon, 2 of, I think it was 4 or 5 we came up to in the end, 5, was what does it mean around like characteristics? So a characteristic around creativity. So coming up with the idea to innovate something that's new and exciting, pushing forward a space. And then bravery. So brave enough to make it happen. I think, again, sort of the nuance that Shannon brought to this was an accepting the risk, right? So the risk of failure, of this. So this might be a great idea, but as a business, it might fail. But again, in the conversation, what came out was really clear was, well, whose risk is it anyway? And Are you accepting a risk that is affecting you, or are you accepting a risk that's not going to affect you as a risk on someone else? So again, some of the detail that comes out through those conversation topics with Shannon. And what we started to do was to kind of say, so if you're going to be a data-driven entrepreneur, right, looking at all these different dimensions that we've brought together, so these 8 different dimensions we've brought into the course, what's basically, we called it the new hygiene, right? So what is the basics? What are the basic entries? So when it comes to ethics, for example, the basics, would be that innovate within the guidelines and the controls. So don't innovate at the expense of people, don't innovate in an unethical way. So that is a kind of societal expectation on you, it's a customer expectation on you. And how would you differentiate in that space? So if the stuff in the red box stops you going to jail, what's the stuff in the black box that can really push you and differentiate against other businesses that might be in the same space or other ideas? And the alignment towards the public good. So acknowledging that you're doing something for society and for the greater good. Now, that does not mean at the expense of making money, right? It does not mean at the expense of putting another business out of business or about doing disruption, but thinking about, what is the new hygiene? So if I have a new startup business, what's the minimum I should do? And then if I have a new startup business and I want to be an entrepreneur, what are the things that can really differentiate me in a positive way within the public eye? So by the time you get to the end of the course, we kind of fill this out. So we've got 8 points of hygiene. So 8 points is your minimum, almost like entry level things that you should do, and 8 possible points of differentiation that you can have on the course. So as I say, we'll share these slides so you can get a feel for it, and hopefully you'll sign up and you'll see what else comes through. So, oops. One of the things that came out there was an entrepreneur needs to understand and responsibly accept the risk of failure. Do you agree with that? Is that something an entrepreneur should do? So, or is it something to kind of dive into and learn as you go? So I'm starting to see different. I have a funny feeling that yes might win here. So the yes vote is definitely winning here, which is good. And I think going back to the point I made about some of the detail that comes out when you listen to the interviews and you see the key messages that come out is being really clear where the risk sits and who is going to experience that risk and that bad outcome should it go wrong. So understanding the risks about setting up your entrepreneurial business is pretty key. And then also being very, very open about what that risk is and what risk people are signing up for. So hopefully the investors will be helpful if that happens. I certainly hope so. I agree with you. And I think also having those investors as people, they've bought into your vision, they've put a stake in the business, they'll hopefully guide you as you go through. So again, just starting to pull it together. So we've got a bit of time for questions at the end. So the purpose was to give you insights into what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur with the specific focus on data and AI and success. So hopefully this sort of, as we say, whirlwind tour gives you a feel for that. So in terms of insight, it's very heavily practitioner led. So you can see that mix of people that are either thought leaders or practitioners themselves. And you can see that mix of disciplines and domains and sectors. So public, private, academic and third sector. So hopefully if you're watching this, you'll go, oh, there's someone who's a bit like me, or there's someone who's in a sector like me, and there'll be some value from hearing what they say. And we do talk generically about an entrepreneur because I think it's really important to have key definitions that we're talking about the same thing. And then we tease out through the interviews where data and AI can make a big difference to what they do, as in either defining the space or delivering their proposition. So the key thing is based around success. It's about practitioner. It's about actionable insights. So view this as like signing up for a sort of fireside chat. So don't have much experience with data analytics. None of my team does either. Will this course help me at all? So a little bit, if I'm honest, right? So if you think of the section with Vicky around data storytelling and data visualization, she'll talk about how you can use data, analyze data to get insights, and then how you surface that insight. So if you get one thing from the course in that space, it'll be around what Vicky talks about in there. but this is not a course about data analytics per se. We have another course that we're developing called People Power Data, which will talk more about the skills that you would need as you build a data capability in an organization. But this course is much more about thinking about the entrepreneurial leadership skills that you would need. You'll definitely get value, whoever asked that question, you'll definitely get value from what Vicky says, but this isn't a course about data analytics in detail. So as I say, we've done a couple of pilots. Thankfully, so we've got great feedback, things to do better, things that were good, things that really stood out. And one of the things that stood out for people was the time machine question. So I'll let you into my secret that I've got a time machine. So hearing people like pause and then reflect and think about what they wish they'd known when they started their journey. So again, you'll get 8 insights from people who have had various different degrees of experience in like driving entrepreneurship or being an entrepreneur, and what advice they would give themselves. So hopefully that in itself will be some value, almost like a bit of a checklist as you go forward. So I think that's everything. So I'll leave up the QR code in case anybody wants to sign up and express an interest in the course for when it gets launched. But I was going to pause. So we've got, I think, five or so minutes left. So thank you for those that have dropped questions into the chat, been monitoring that as we've gone on. But if there's anything else, please drop it in the chat. I'll do my best to answer and guide you in the right direction. Or if there's any observations you want to put in there or questions, that would be great. But that was the main thing that I wanted to cover, was giving you a feel for the course. So if you take one thing away from it, think of it as a fireside chat with thought leaders and entrepreneurs that will help you helpfully set yourself up to be a successful entrepreneur yourself, and how data can make a real powerful difference between those that succeed and those that don't. So that's it. Thank you for giving up your lunchtime for this whirlwind tour of the ideas, the concepts, and some of the people we've got. But I will leave it there.